In 2019, I had just recently rejoined Second Age. I originally started playing in 2014 when my first son was born, during a sleepless night, but that's another story. One thing that attracted me back then was finding fishermen at sea, and therefore I decided to rise tracking on one of my tunes to find them and place them on a boat to scout the seas of Britannia. But scouting the seas was boring, so I started to play another tune while doing it in the background. But I was playing on a laptop, and so I couldn't watch two tunes simultaneously. Several times I had tracked someone in my pirate, only to notice it much later. So, uncertain on how to solve this problem, I told my best friend back then, Crypto, of my problem, and he tells me this. Just make a track macro that if no evidence in system message, nothing happens. Else, type something in guild chat, and your other tune will read it and you get back to your pirate. I was a complete noob back then, and haven't touched UO in ages. It was my first experience with Razor too, and this simple idea opened the world for me. Being a PK in the deep of my heart, it wasn't long before I realized I could place a tune in some hot spot in a dungeon and make him track and send me guild chat information if he happens to spot someone. This was around the same time I founded BJV, with the infamous Morpheus and the other two original members, Arsen and Cakes. To me it was clear that to be an effective PK guild, we'd first have to find players to kill, and so the idea of using the tracking skill, coupled with guild chat, was the cornerstone of it all. Thus begins the development of the Global Tracking System, GTS. At first I was looking for places that would have best coverage, disregarding anything else. For instance, this corridor in the Seed Fire Elementals was one of the first chosen spots. I was able to track Lich Lords, the Seed Fire Elementals, the Seed Liches, and the Seed Poison Elementals from here. This was Covetous' original spot, near level 1 Harpies, from which I was able to track dragons in level 4 Elder Gazers, both Harpies spots, and Liches at level 3. But I soon realized that this was not good enough. People were starting to get aware of these tunes in dungeons. They would simply reveal them and have spawn kill them to avoid taking murder counts. Empty inventory, sure, but tracking was disrupted. For one thing, others made me realize there was one thing I had to realize by myself. A simple guild chat that mentioned that tracker spotted someone wasn't good enough. If only it could tell me where. So I decided to code directions inside the macros. For instance, if the tracker was placed northwest of the Lich Lord room and would detect southeast in the direction report, it probably meant that someone was in the Lich Lord room. So these two things combined brought new needs to the tracker's location. They had to be in places where mob was either absent or far away, and they had to be in places that would have no ambiguity in directions. The new tracking spots came to be, the ones that we still use today with only minor modification. 1 Shame Boat, 2 Destard Ankh Boat, 3 AW Ledges, 4 Covetous Ankh, 5 Iceloth level 4 Stairs. But even with these new spots, the macro was far from being good. Trackers were killed, for example, and if it was not a problem for my tracker, it was a problem for my guildmates' tracker during their night, with them being AFK. So I made a part of the macro where, commanded by a communication crystal, the dead tracker would show, accept resurrection, and resume tracking. This made Covetous Ankh spot particularly good, because the tracker would self-rest at the Ankh if dead. The system became so good that people started complaining instead of fighting it, and eventually admins gave up and deemed AFK tracking illegal. But this was not the only rule that changed. Up until then, you could have a tune parked anywhere in-game, even unreachable, with which you could do all actions you wanted. For instance, it was common to have fishermen fishing behind a boat blockade, in total safety. But now, a new rule was introduced that stated that trackers might be reachable by players. For instance, originally, Shameboat Tracker wasn't reachable. These two changes occurred in 2022. Since then, we entered a new era of the system, where ghosts became more important. AFK ghosting is still legal, as of now. And where the criteria for the AFK tracking spots became obsolete. So I'm now searching for new potential spots for pretended tracking with better overall results for the guild. The tracking macros are now at their 7.0 release, and they have reached the maturity after several years of development. Here is the tracking macro for Covetous Ink for you to take a look at. The other macros are similar in concept, with just minor modifications here and there for the peculiarity of the spot. At the moment of the recording of this video, the tracking macro is responsible for another change on the server. Guild chat is now, as of February 2025, deemed illegal. In a ninja patch, in the word of the admin itself, guild chat was disabled overnight to counter the tracking macro, making it so that now, to send information, we will have to use communication crystals. This is the story of how a single macro, simple macro, changed the shard forever. Thanks for watching. Come find us.